everything should start with the buyer, right? It's understanding them completely. And I think a lot of companies probably do build out their ideal customer profile, but then maybe don't revisit it as often as they should. So really understanding what are their challenges, where do they spend their time, who are they influenced by, who do they look to for insights and information. So all of this is really important just to build that kind of really accurate picture of who your customer is and what's important to them and how you can help to support them better.
Today's guest is Robyn Hartley. She specializes in B2B influencer campaign management and helping B2B brands build advocacy strategies. Quick shout out to B2B Pod Pros, my agency that helps brands reach new audiences through B2B podcast sponsorships. Robyn, pleasure to have you on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm very well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to have you on here. Now, before we dive into advocacy and influencer strategies, what's something interesting about you that most people don't know? They're not going to see this on your LinkedIn profile.
So I would say I absolutely love to travel. So for me, just trying different countries, experiencing the culture, food, history, soaking up everything that country has to offer. So I've done a few stints of traveling and yeah, it's definitely something that I want to do more of. Yeah, I feel free to start any conversations with me around travel. I definitely will respond that it's something that I love to talk about.
Okay. Traveling, there's a travel question and a rapid fire question at the end of the show. So we'll probably touch a little bit about that at the end. Okay. Now, you recently have taken a step into entrepreneurship. But before we talk about your new company and your new service, you were the media director at the marketing practice. Now, did you leave there because of a bad manager, or can you just tell us more about that role and some of your responsibilities?
Yeah, so not at all. So I've been in marketing now since 2012. And during that time, I've worked in a variety of different roles. So that has been agency side, but also brand side as well and client side. So that for me has given me a great experience of the challenges of both and, you know, of being the buyer and the seller. And so most recently, as you said, I was a media director at the marketing practice, which was a fantastic experience, gave me some great exposure to working with some brilliant. I was providing cross-channel media strategy for really complex organizations that had multiple business units. So like I say, fantastic experience. And the reason I left is because I wanted to give working for myself a go. And I personally feel quite passionate about the area of work that I've moved into and that's something that I wanted to focus a little bit more on.
Oh, yeah. Paper Kite Media. That's the name of the new business, right?
That's it. Yeah. So Paper Cut Media is something that I've started around building kind of advocacy strategies for businesses, for B2B brands. We'll get into this in a little bit, I'm sure, but just in terms of helping that buyer as much as possible throughout that buying journey and how brands can support that as much as possible. And so the three ways that I'm looking to help brands is by engaging external influencers and subject matter experts within their space, but then also tying that into kind of building what a lot of people are referring to as internal influencers. So elevating employees into thought leaders within their industry and how that can help. And then tying in customer advocacy to that as well. For me, it's almost like if you were to think of like a Venn diagram and putting all of those three together, trust would be right at the center of that. Yeah, it's something I'm really excited about. And I think from my experience and kind of the challenges that I've seen a lot of brands face, I think this is the direction that the industry is going in, and a lot of brands will need support in these areas.
Yeah, when a brand approaches you and they're seeking help for advocacy strategies, do you naturally start with internal strategies first in terms of leveraging their own employees to become thought leaders? Is that like a first step for you?
So for me, I think the first step is yes, but also even a little bit further back from that. So everything should start with the buyer, right? It's understanding them completely. And I think a lot of companies probably do build out their ideal customer profile, but then maybe don't revisit it as often as they should. So really understanding what are their challenges, where do they spend their time, who are they influenced by, who do they look to for insights and information. So all of this is really important just to build that kind of really accurate picture of who your customer is and what's important to them and how you can help to support them better. The decision-making process as well in B2B, that has changed a lot in the last kind of 5 to 10 years as well. Now there's more and more research coming out which highlights that there is a lot more self-research within that buyer's journey. And I think it was Forrester who released a stat that was around 80% of the buyer's journey is now completed before a prospect even speaks to a sales rep. So there's a massive chunk of time that brands need to help support that journey as much as possible. And that brand activity is crucial within that period. But you can also support that with a network of other voices that can advocate for your brand and amplify it as much as possible. So I think once you have a full understanding of your buyer, that's where I start. And then you go, okay, let's look at your current strategy. Let's look at the lay of the land, because for me, a lot of the experience that I've had sits within that media strategy element. It's where you'll see the most impact, is where you tie everything that I can help you with into everything else that you're doing, tying them all into the goals and what you're trying to achieve as a company. And then it might be identifying key accounts, for example, that you want to go after and how these tactics can feed into that. And then you can start to plan out, okay, let's look at the specific tactics of influencer strategy, employee thought leadership and customer advocacy to make sure that's tying into all of that and making it as impactful as possible.
Okay, let's use that situation as an example, right? Let's say there's a few different key accounts that the brand wants to go into. And then what's the next step? Is it, okay, let's leverage some employees, maybe for thought leadership? Or do you automatically go to seeking out external influencers that could play a role?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go for external influencers, for example, and again, going back to that question, who do your buyers follow? Who do they trust? Who holds authority within your space? And looking at how you can collaborate them in a way that is really authentic. And I think that word is thrown around a lot, but I actually think it has to provide value to the person that you're working with, to their audience, to your buyer. So making sure that it is valuable, making sure that the influencer that you're working with buys into everything that you're offering and the value that you're able to give. And so that strategy piece is for the influencers. Then looking at, okay, for the employee side, who wants to engage in a program like this? Who wants to amplify their visibility online? And it might be for personal reasons as well, right? It's not just that all in the benefit of the company. It might be that they're going for a promotion. They might want to hit sales quota. They might have some even more personal goals outside of that, which are like appearing on a podcast like this or being invited to speak on stage at an industry event. So all of those things tie into it. And then who is going to be most impactful within those conversations and opening up those accounts as well. So if you've got specific accounts, looking at, okay, who do these people follow? So really getting into that ideal customer profile. What are their challenges? What kind of content is going to resonate with them? How can you provide value to them? And then everything builds around that.
Okay, what are some things that you do to identify like the right employees to be a part of this or the right influencers to engage with?
Yeah. And it's a good question because I think there's room for anybody who wants to do this, right? There's a space for everybody to share their knowledge and become more visible online. One thing I would say is it absolutely shouldn't be forced. This isn't a company mandated thing. You're not going to get the right level of engagement by putting it out there like that. So I would always lead with how can this benefit the individual? So this shouldn't all be about the company goals. And of course it will contribute towards that, but that person will have an invested interest in doing it as well. And it might be, like I say, getting promoted, becoming more visible to senior leadership, or a variety of things that sit outside of that. It really needs to be an employee-led program as opposed to a company-led program when you're inviting people to take part in this. And I think leading by example is also really important. So seeing, like personally for me, working at organizations where I have seen leadership be more active online and have increased their visibility that way has definitely empowered me and encouraged me to do the same thing, and also has created an environment where I feel safe to do that, where it's going to be celebrated as opposed to maybe interpreted as a signal that I might be leaving the company or anything like that. So I think it's good to have the right environment as well and leading by example. So having a senior leadership team can really help with that. And then again, okay, so who wants to be engaged? Senior leadership. And then also the strategic positions within the company. So it might be business development representatives who might want to be more visible, or it might be sales, it might be client success, so the people that hold those relationships. And it might be, for example, a part of it for me was being agency side, working with certain clients, and we might be having great conversations, but there might be things outside of that we're not doing, and I'll be talking around those things online, and then clients would then come to me and go, oh, actually I read your post the other day around this. So I think it's ways in which you can provide value, you can showcase your experience and your knowledge and open up those new conversations.
And have you ever had any obstacles in terms of getting companies to come on board, specifically senior leadership, to buy into this? Hey, let's try to encourage or set an example for the employees of the company to be thought leaders. And if you ever had those obstacles, what are some tactics that you use to try to get around them?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I think there's so many things that can stop people from doing these kinds of programs. And one of them might be a fear of not putting the right information out there in the first place, or a fear of being misinterpreted, or saying something that they shouldn't be, or something like that. But I think for me, it starts as well with a social media policy is really helpful with that. So you can lay out, this is what we're really empowering people, and this is something that we encourage. And so I think that's a good starting point. And I think also previously, it's time as well. Time is one of the biggest constraints for everybody, right? Showing up and being consistent. And you can provide, for me personally, I can provide all the support that's needed, but certainly there does need to be an element of time investment from that person to be committed to the program. I think the time element is sometimes it might not be the right timing, and that's okay. I'm sure we've been in situations where one quarter you are literally rushed off your feet and you just don't have the headspace to even consider something like this, but you are potentially interested. Going back to that person and giving them another opportunity in 3 months' time, when things might have quietened down for them and they might want to be on board and get involved. So I think that's also another way to get people included as well. It's not just saying this is the intake. Okay, yeah, you're not going to have an opportunity to do it then. And I've also seen that if you're having a support like myself, is a sounding board as well. So if you're producing a post and you're like, oh, I don't know whether I'm not sure about this, then it's good to have that support network that you can share that with and say, what do you think about this? Do you think this is engaging? And actually, funnily enough, I had a post similar to that recently where I'm sure you saw my Blue for Real video when I was trying to create video content. And so I came up with all these outtakes that I had when I was trying to record video content for the first time. And as I was looking at all the content back, I was thinking, do you know what? There's actually something in this. I can put this together in it. I think it might be quite funny. Anyway, once I'd produced it and done it all and edited it, I sent it to a few people and said, look, honest opinion, what do you think of this? And I think having that reassurance and having that support is really helpful, particularly in those early days when you're building that confidence in posting more online and you're trying to boost your visibility.
Yeah, that I think it's essential. I think I read somewhere where somebody said that their company created sub Slack channel specifically for those employees who were wanting to and started to engaging on LinkedIn and crafting posts. And so they could be all there to support each other, engage with those posts. So I thought that was just brilliant, because when you see your peers are going through the same thing that you're doing and you're there to support one another, having that support group, that peer group, is definitely key for success. Hey, let's take a quick break. Working with startups and tech companies has taught me a big lesson. Finding the right tools for your team can really change your business. That's why I'm excited about Deal, the all-in-one platform for global teams. That's DEEL. Deal makes it simple for companies managing an international team to seamlessly hire, onboard, and pay both global employees and contractors. They handle all of the paperwork, exchange foreign salaries into local ones, and ensure compliance with local regulations. Deal is designed with the needs of a global workforce in mind: seamless contract signing, easy expense uploads, and platform time off management, and more. Plus, its customer support team is available 24/7, no matter the time zone. How about that? Ready to see how Deal can transform your global workforce operations? Head to Deal.com to book a demo today. That's DEEL.com. So let's talk a little bit about the external influencers. Are there any tactics or tools that you utilize to try to find the right influencers to engage with?
Yeah, so I work with a number of different people to help with sourcing the influencers from their own networks as well. But I think ultimately it goes back to that goal of who are you trying to reach at the end of it? And every brief is so different. So it depends very much on the brief that you get in from the client. What are you looking for? Like, who's your end buyer? Who are the decision makers? What industry? And industry can also play a massive role in that. But just always on the lookout for people who have a really engaged following within their space. And also so it's a lot of work, like manual searching and great profiles, and you'll have great conversations with people. But I think for me as well, a massive thing that I look for is community engagement. So when you're looking at options for influencers and who will be the best person to work with, how do they engage with their community? Have they just got a really large following that actually they don't really spend a huge amount of time kind of having conversations with and engaging with in comments and all of this sort of stuff? Because that for me is at the heart of what LinkedIn is about, really. And I think that's what's really valuable to brands when you're putting these strategies together.
Yeah, absolutely. I recently discovered, I didn't even know there was a tool for this, but for people trying to find YouTube influencers. And then I saw you on a post with Kitchener from Channel Crawler, his tool. And I thought that was so cool that you can go to Channel Crawler and find specific influencers on YouTube. And there's other tools out there. George, the founder of Fluencer, you can find B2B influencers like on TikTok and LinkedIn, which is really cool. So yeah, we're starting to see a lot more tools and apps that help you find the right influencer. But many times it's also a manual effort, specifically if it's a very niche industry, and having to look maybe for certain hashtags or certain job titles or things like that. But then even once you find these people, as you said, how are people engaging with their posts? Are they really a subject matter expert? And do they have a following that is probably going to take action if they recommend a product or service they believe in? It's still a lot of rolling up your sleeves and finding these right people. I want to ask you about measurement and tracking performance. What are some things that you tend to look for to assess whether or not a campaign was successful?
Yeah, and it's an interesting question because I think there are so many different indicators that there could be. But I think going back to those original goals that you set at the beginning of the process, right? What are they? What's the company trying to achieve overall? At a company level, that might be more of the harder KPIs. So you're looking at things like revenue that you've generated. Attribution can sometimes be quite difficult with these sorts of things. So having a look across all of your channels and how they're performing and the impact on those can really help. Demo bookings, direct pipeline that has been generated, all of these things are things that you could set as indicators. And then also number of strategic accounts that you were able to engage. So going back to the example that we used earlier, there might be a specific account that you wanted to open a conversation with. Have we been able to engage any of the decision makers within that across any of the activity that we've been doing? That's some of the kind of harder KPIs. But then there's softer ones within that as well. So obviously you've got the standard like social impressions and clicks and reposts and all of this sort of stuff. But for the employee thought leadership programs, that could look very different. And that, going back to the last question that we went through, is hitting sales quota. Did they achieve that? Did they open up new conversations? So one of my personal goals, for example, when I started being a little bit more active on LinkedIn was I would love to be included in more industry focused conversations, events or podcasts like this one. So that's another indicator as well. So for me, it can be very personal to that person and the individual that you're working with, but it also can contribute to a much larger goal that the company as an overall are working towards. And I think the other thing that I would just comment on as well is there has to be realistic timeframes within this as well. So it isn't, there are a lot of people who promise overnight results and things like that, and it doesn't exist. There's no quick fix, I don't think. So these sort of things do take time, but that is why you have regular check-ins, and then you can tweak and optimize as you go to make sure that you're pulling in the right direction, and we're eventually going to hit that overall goal, and you're constantly measuring those indicators along the way.
Yeah, I agree with you on the timelines. If somebody to start being active on LinkedIn and building their personal brand, sharing what they do about their work, it may take them months before they actually get comfortable writing posts on LinkedIn. It took me a long time, and I'm still not that comfortable, but it took me over a year to get comfortable with that aspect. Whereas working with an external influencer, the timeline I feel like is much shorter, because if they got a large reach and they got a loyal audience, then within weeks, you'll start to see a good maybe return on that investment. But definitely a much longer time horizon if you're thinking about internal employees as thought leaders for your service and brand. So I want to hop into the rapid fire section. But before we do that, again, tell us the name of your company and why you named it that, and then where people can learn more about you.
Yeah, so it's Paperkite Media. It comes from, so for me, it was boiling down to the butterfly effect and the kind of thinking around that. Paperkite is a type of butterfly. And so in a business sense, it's that the small actions along the way and the small steps that you take can impact the much larger strategic picture of a company. So that's where it came from. And yeah, we're basically overall advocacy strategies for B2B brands. So that includes engaging influence marketing, looking at who the experts are in your niche and feeding that into your overall marketing strategy, but then also elevating your employees into thought leaders so that they can share their knowledge, build their own career path and visibility, and in turn your companies, and then also leveraging customer stories as well. Happy clients and peer recommendation for the prospects that you're trying to open up conversations with.
Love it. Love it. All right. First rapid fire question for you. Just give me the first thing that pops into your head.
Okay.
First one's easy. Oh my God. It's a slam dunk. Favorite city that you ever visited?
Oh, actually, it's not easy. Oh, I don't know. Favorite visit? There's so many. So I'd have to say, so the favorite place I think I visited, probably Cusco in Peru. I absolutely adored it. It was just so lovely. The walking around, it was just so beautiful, and everybody there was just so friendly and welcoming. So yeah, it was an incredible experience. I would love to go back.
Okay. Cusco, is that what the name is?
Cusco, yeah.
Okay. All right. Next question. A favorite TV show that you can watch again and again?
Oh, do you know what? So many people are going to laugh at this. For me, it's Gavin and Stacey. I don't know if you're aware of this show or if you've seen it before. It's like
no.
Standard. It is like cheesy show, massively. Yeah, just very nostalgic from years back. Anyway, they're doing a new Christmas special this year, so I'm very excited. So that's. Can I say two? I would say.
Yeah. What's the next one?
The second one would be Friends.
Okay.
Yeah. Just
Friends
like
is a classic.
You can just watch that on. Yeah,
it's classic. Okay, next one. The most interesting thing you did in the last 26 days, Robyn?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. Most interesting thing I've done in the last 26 days. Oh, what have I done? That's not a good question, is it? It's meant to be quick fire. I feel the pressure. Oh, okay. I'm going to say this podcast because it's been such a lovely conversation to have. Yeah, so I'm going to go with that because I feel like me and you we've spoken a little bit over LinkedIn, and it's been such an interesting conversation to actually have a proper intro and say hello over face to face.
All right.
Yeah.
How about that?
I'd say this podcast.
Okay. Last question for you. If you could wave a magic wand in regards to your new business, what would you wish for?
It's an excellent question. I would say I would just wish for, that's a very good question, as in like support for the business or kind of new clients or kind of
anything that in regards to the new business.
Okay. I would say that it would be just helping more and more people with their strategies. I think there's been a lot of change in the way, like I say, that B2B buyers are going through that decision-making process. And I genuinely love having those conversations with clients and seeing those great results. So it would be just helping my clients get fantastic results and having a successful year. That would be my success. So we'll see. Yeah.
Okay. Like it. There you have it, folks. Robyn Hartley from Paperkite Media. I'm going to put links to her website and her LinkedIn profile in the show. Robyn, thank you for coming on Innovators Can Laugh.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a lovely conversation and appreciate it.
Same here. For those listening, I'll be back next week with another innovator from the UK. And if you like this, tell others about it and don't forget to subscribe. This This is Eric signing off. Cheers.